to YouTube now. There we go. Now we've got to go live. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, that was more difficult than it needed to be, but all right, we got that fixed. Yeah, so that repository that you just saw is an example of using Obsidian for doing some workflows. And in fact, I happen to have that open, so let me do a quick share on that.
Because that's something recent. The last commit was 20 days ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was something that I played around with for a couple of weeks back, and haven't had a chance to show it off quite yet, but yeah, I think this is something kind of interesting to play with. So first of all, Obsidian is a note-taking tool that's based in Markdown. So each one of these documents in here is actually just a Markdown file on my hard drive. It's currently in view mode. I switched to edit mode, and you can see there's the actual Markdown of each of these notes. So I used to use OneNote in order to keep track of things, and so this is kind of taking the place of OneNote for my system. But it's got a couple of advantages. One, it's Markdown, so it's easier for me to format, to create links, all that fun stuff. But then you can also have links between the notes. Like here, I've got a link to the Strange Loop 2022 note, which is this one up here. So if I were in view mode and I followed that link, I could go there. So you can link all your documents together, and then that allows it to do this here, where it shows you all the backlinks. So if I'm looking at this document, there are no backlinks, but like here, that conference in Wisconsin. So I've got a note about the call for speakers for that conference, Wisconsin, and then here I've got a backlink from a note called "Decline to Submit" to that conference, Wisconsin.
It was referred from that backlink to the page you saw.
Yes. So there's the.
Okay. So you have bidirectional linking.
Yep. And if you if you want to actually see the graph of of all the links, you can open it up in the graph view. It's got the physics associated with keeping things together, all that fun stuff. Although I really don't find this view terribly useful, especially when I take a look at a notebook that already has a lot of notes in it and a lot of links. It's it just becomes a big tangle. So the valuable part of having these backlinks is first of all, while I'm thinking about this one note, not one note. When I'm thinking about this note, I'm immediately reminded the context. But then you can also install plugins that will analyze those backlinks and give you some more insight. So what I've experimented with, and the reason I created that repository, is let's suppose that we set up a folder for each different type of fact. So let's suppose that I want to model the call for speakers concept. So I'm speaking at different conferences. I want to keep track of every time there's a call for speakers, and then I'm going to make decisions based on it. So it's like, okay, KCDC. they announced their call for speakers. There's the link to the Sessionize page where you can submit the dates of the conference, the location, and the deadline for submitting a proposal. And I also put that deadline up here in the front matter. And by making it part of the front matter, now it becomes visible to those plugins that do the analysis.
Yeah.
So then I make a decision based on that, and so here's speaker submission with it, which is a successor fact to call for speakers. So here is where I submitted to KCDC, and that's the these are the links to the Sessionize pages where I of the submissions, and this is a backlink to talks. So far, I just have these 2 talks in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is the one that you were referring to: historical modeling and search for missing persons. So
is that just a fake abstract, or is that an abstract for real talk you would like to do?
Yep, that's a real abstract. Yeah. That one has not yet been accepted at any conferences, but yeah, that's going over the Namus project that I used historical modeling on several years back, and how it how it impacted the project. So yeah, 2016. So
because I found the way it was described quite interesting, because really you have this history of information, and where does it come from, and which information overrides what. It's really the history part, because in general in historical modeling we keep the history, but we don't really use it. We use it for conflict detection, while here you really use it. So that's another way of looking at.
Yep. Yeah. I was pretty proud of this project. So we replaced an existing system that was modeled in the typical way, where we've got like the current state of a case as a single record, and these cases are pretty big, so that single record had many columns, and then the history of that information was kind of an afterthought. So it was a set of what do they call those tables? But one row per change to the auditing table. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it said, okay, with the case with this ID, this person changed this column from this value to that value, and it's just boom, 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 a whole bunch of those things. So somebody performs an edit, and like they change, first name, middle name, last name, save. Now 3 of those records get in there, and you update this other record. And there was no lineage of what information did they see when they entered that change.
There was no causal link between.
Right. Yeah. Yep. So so that was causing some problems for them. I mean, they brought us in to basically rebuild the system because the search engine was really slow. There were some reliability issues with it, and so we basically identified that okay, the search engine, the search we can fix by just exporting that to something that's designed for search, because they were doing search as SQL queries. And said, that's not really working well for you. After doing what we want to do with your database, it certainly won't work. So we're going to project that into Elasticsearch and do search from there. And then the other thing was, in order to handle all of these issues with reliability, let's really analyze the historical relationships among these various pieces of data. And yeah, it's really, it really turned out to be a pretty important project and a really good change for them.
And could you go back then to a certain point in time?
They that feature, that feature wasn't exposed through the user interface. The information was there to do that. A slight variant of that was exposed through the interface and was a very important feature is that somebody that is coming to see the case for the first time will see only the approved changes. So they will see a version of the case at some point in the past where it's not a linear set of changes. Somebody might have changed some vehicle information, and somebody else might have changed some DNA or fingerprint information, and one could be approved and the other one still pending, and so people looking at the case for the first time would only see the approved changes. If you logged in as an administrator, then you would see the case in its most recent state, and you would be able to see a history of who made what change, and you would be able to approve and deny those changes. And then the third aspect of that is if you yourself had made some changes to the case, even if they were not yet approved, you saw your changes, but not anybody else's unapproved changes.
Okay. So, and did you develop any special UI components to see this history?
Yes. So we started with the idea of the Git history tree. So if you were to take a look at something in
that program is a private program. It's not the source is not somewhere.
Right. Yeah. So here is the repository for Janaga.net, for example. So yeah, we're if you look at the history this way, you see the different branches that people are working on. So somebody makes a change, but it's not yet approved. It will show up as if it were a branch, and then once it's approved, the difference between Git and what we did is that we actually just made that part of the main line as if it were part of the main line all along, and that was to kind of simplify the user interface for the administrators. I mean, the administrators don't know Git, and as you know, it takes somebody some frustrating hours to learn Git. But yeah, we wanted to show them this person was making these changes, that person was making those changes, and they're not yet approved, and then you can just go to the to any one of their changes along the way and say, yeah, I approve this one, and then it makes that entire if this one here were approved, it would make that and all of its predecessors approved, but then these would still be pending, and so we were able to train the administrators on that simplified interface. It did have some really interesting edge cases where in Git it would have been a merge conflict, essentially, is that you've got two people who change the same thing. Yep. If you approve one, then the other one, it just does not allow you to approve it. What we left room for and didn't get a chance to implement was giving you a user interface that allows you to do the merge. So like, okay, here are the two different candidates. Pick one for each of the different fields, or just type in a new value and do the merge that way. But instead of taking the time to build that, they said, okay, we kind of get what's going on. What we can do is just look at this one that we can't merge in, make notes of the changes that are appropriate, and then actually go into the application and make those changes ourselves and improve our own change.
Okay.
And say, okay,
Do
that's
a
fine.
manual,
Yeah.
a manual conflict resolution.
Yeah. And that loses the causal relationship between their change and the one that that they want to approve, but it solved the problem.
Yeah, they were happy with it. So
Yeah. So so that was a really cool project, and I want to have a chance to talk to people about it. And so that's one of the talks that I submit to different conferences. Like that one, I submitted to Strange Loop. So here's the Strange Loop call for speakers. The deadline is already over, but the speaker selection, which I haven't put that metadata in here yet, but the speaker selection is coming up on Friday, so I'll know pretty soon. But the really exciting thing that I was playing with here was a plugin, which shows up right here on the dashboard, and this plugin lets you write queries over the pages. So it's Dataview, and so I said, okay, I want the list of all the speaker submissions. So give me all the pages in speaking / speaker submission. So essentially, give me all facts of that type. And then here, I just want the outlinks. So I just want the things that speaker submission are pointing to. Do the same thing with decline to submit. So take all of those and give me all of their outlinks. And so those outlinks should be links back to the calls for speaker. So right here, I get all of the calls for speaker pages. Yeah. And then now I'm looking for the open calls for speaker. So that's basically calls for speaker where not exists speaker submission, and where not exists decline to submit.
Yeah.
And then render those in a table. Show me the event link, but then also show me the deadline from the front matter.
So you get an overview of all the calls that you have to process.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So it's like, okay, I have to make a decision by April 27th, April 28th. Well, those dates have already passed. I've already made those decisions of what I'm going to submit and if I'm going to submit. And then in order to make that decision, I create a note as a speaker submission, or I create a note as a decline to submit.
Yeah.
And then by creating that note, it removes that from the dashboard.
Mm-hmm. So everything that is in call for speakers, decline to submit, speaker submission, and talks, that's actually data. And the dashboard is just the query that you run on the data.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So the the thing that's got me really excited about this this example is that I could have been this is the story I'm telling myself right now. I could have been somebody who doesn't doesn't know JavaScript, doesn't know .NET, isn't able to build a full user interface and a distributed system, and yet I could still have built this. So these queries from Dataview, Dataview is a general purpose query engine, so you can query it in all sorts of different ways. But to come up with these specific queries takes development skill. But I can imagine a different plugin that knows how to do these kinds of queries and let you build a workflow, and then you could just simply describe the workflow in this query. So you're saying, okay, I want to show all facts of type call for speakers. All right, and when I decline to submit, don't show it anymore. When I have a speaker submission, don't show it anymore. So I just express those ideas, which is kind of like a subset of factual. I could even have a user interface where you can express those ideas without bringing all of factual into play. But if it were just factual, then it would be about a third of the code that you see here. But then somebody could evolve their system and build something that works well just for them.
And then we get close to an Excel for historical modeling.
Yep, exactly. Okay. So
without knowing, I found this this page on GitHub.
Yep. Yeah, I haven't really talked about it yet outside of just a couple of folks that have showed it at work. So yeah, I think I'm going to this one right here that I committed to GitHub. This is 3-week old set of data. The actual workbook that I'm using day to day has evolved since then. So I have additional decisions that I made about these events, and in fact, I have submitted to Codepalooza. I have not submitted to Full Stack Exchange, and the KCDC submission, although one of them was accepted, I actually declined to commit to that session. So yeah, there are other things happening that is like, you know what, I'm taking on a bit too much here. I need to step back. We'll go ahead and let KCDC go for this year.
Okay. Oh, anyway, if you give that talk one day on historical modeling and the search for missing persons, let me know. Let me know. I'll record it and put it on YouTube if it's not a recorded event. Because I think that's quite a nice. There are some things in that I will need in my application, so that might be useful.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember one time during one of the sessions you spoke about a tool with bidirectional linking, but you didn't went further. But okay, so now we found it.
Yep.
How did I came to that tool? saving and loading facts. Yeah. Then debugging in JavaScript in the jnaga.js. Then I say, this is not working. So then I went back to .NET and started from the test cases there. Yeah, you have a test case where you do a round trip with storing to see whether a UTC date time comes back. And so then I refreshed my memory from long ago, and that together with the memory store was quite useful to get me back into the structures. Then I remembered that. Well, do you see this one? A document from that. I said there was a document with a data structure, and I couldn't find it anymore. so there I went through the GitHub repository here locally, couldn't find it. I say it's not possible. Went to the historical modeling site, didn't find it. And in the end, by searching GitHub, I came to some pull request.
Yes.
And it was only in the pull request.
Right.
And then my first question is, how come that if you make a fork of a repository, it doesn't copy this pull requests? And even other branches, because the pull request comes from another branch.
Mm-hmm.
If you fork initially, I think he will copy the branches. But if you just pull afterwards, or you sync a fork
Mm-hmm.
with an original repository, all these additional branches will not come over.
Yeah. I do know that my workflow when working with a fork is to have two remotes on my local clone, and so one is origin, that's my fork, and then the other one is upstream, and that's the thing that I cloned it from. And so I'll fetch upstream, and that fetch gets all of the branches from upstream, and then I can select what I want to push. Yeah, I tend not to push all of them though, because usually in a fork, the purpose for the fork is for me to contribute something back to main or developer or whatever their standard is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's interesting. Why doesn't I guess GitHub isn't making that decision for you and saying, oh, you must be interested in all of the branches, and so we're just going to give that to you.
It's something that I realized multiple times. I never dig into it, but so I should one day when I have time, because it's quite confusing that, for example, that branch is in the original, but is not on my copy. But then, after finding this one, the database schema, in the same folder, there was this one.
Yes.
Which you showed me, and we went through it together. You explained everything to me long ago, and I completely forgot it.
Yeah, that's a pretty important one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that is very interesting. So by discovering this page and going through it, and then it was Thursday again. So, but I think with this documentation, I'm finally on a good way to get it implemented. What makes the JavaScript example difficult is still the syntax in JavaScript. I'm not enough familiar with JavaScript. Regularly, I arrive on code which I have to look up, which I don't understand. What is this syntax? Also, for example, the call stack in VS Code is confusing to me. Is not as clear as the call stack in Visual Studio. And on top of that, the example with the shared list, because it's a web page, it makes the debugging a lot more complicated.
Right.
Because all of this code has been optimized, has been, what was it? Not only compressed,
minified.
but minified. And so you get a lot of funny things.
Yeah. I know that we worked through different scenarios to figure out how to use source maps on the client and on the server, and how to get part of that working. So I think we did find a solution for client-side source maps. But yeah, I think you had to. Do replace the npm package with a link, a system
with a symlink.
Symlink, yeah.
Yeah, but that was toward Jinaga. So I have the shared list. That's my main project. Instead of linking to Jinaga as an npm package, I was symlink to my local installation of Jinaga. And then I can browse the Jinaga code. But when I get into the local web page,
Okay.
It's still giving funny things.
Okay, so that only helped with the server side code, but
Yeah.
inside the browser.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Because actually my problem, last time I told you about this fact graph and then the edges and the fact reference and all these data structures.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to understand, especially the graph, where does it come from and how does it work? And for that to understand, you have to go through the code completely, not just the Postgres store, because there you simply save it.
Mm-hmm.
And to help me understand that, the test cases in .NET are really useful.
Oh, okay.
So wait, let me see which one. I'll put it here. There was this so Jinaga test. Yeah, I copied it to SQL. It was the memory store test, which I copied to SQLite store test now. And there was a test store round trip to UTC. And in fact, the only thing it does is just create a new instance of Jinaga through the Jinaga test.create. And then just make a fact. So the airline day is await j.fact, new airline day, new airline. And that's very easy to follow because then you see how he creates the fact manager. He goes through the serialization process. And he gets the fact back after saving it.
Yeah, I'm getting the
Wait, but
source
I
code
can
loaded up as well.
if you want, I can show you screen, and then where is that one? Jinaga dot. No, it's not. Is it that one? Let's see. Yeah, that's the one. I just make that window a little bit smaller, and it's visible for everybody. Okay. Like this. Is this one readable?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So in fact, you see this is SQLite store test. So this comes from the memory test. And so if I would like to test the SQLite store, then I need this one.
Okay, right.
So I just make a new instance of Jinaga with SQLite store. So for the moment, I'm testing with the memory store. So I just use that one. Then
Okay.
I added a few more lines here. So just to create more facts to see what all these graphs are doing. And then it's actually very nice to go through it and to debug. But then if you go to that fact here, yeah, the creation of a fact, you see that he creates a fact manager where he serializes the prototype. Actually, for prototype, there were two names. I realized. What was it? Yeah, sometimes we call it a runtime fact, and sometimes we call it a prototype.
Yeah. The distinction is whether whether it has been round tripped or not. So the prototype is coming directly from the application code. So following the Gang of Four prototype pattern, it's like I want something that looks like this, and then once we save that to the graph, then when we deserialize it back out, now we've got something in a canonical form, and so we'll refer to that one as the fact
The
instance,
runtime fact.
the runtime fact. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the distinction between runtime fact and just fact or fact reference, or it might be called fact instance in some places. The runtime fact is is a C# record that that works within the application, versus the fact instance is the data structure that contains the fields and the predecessors and that set of things.
You mean the serialized record?
Yes.
Okay. The one that we sent over the wire.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
The one that we store in the database. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to let Mr. Biscuits in. He's getting kind of fussy. What are you fussing about? I hear you. Silly cat. Oh, what are you doing way over there?
Biscuits has some love for mathematics and programming.
Yes, he does. He says, y'all are talking code without me. I think he's going to jump. Yes, you're going to jump, aren't you? I'll get you. Okay, so yeah, that's been helping to figure out what the data structures are supposed to do.
Yeah, because then we get to that graph, and then actually the conclusion is that a graph, you can have multiple graphs, and a graph is just my current fact with everything that is behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we go to, where was it? That's model. I had somewhere multiprojection here. Get clients with their names and their yards with addresses. So actually, we created a supplier fact, supplier 1, 2, 3, then clients which refer to suppliers, then the names of clients which refer back to clients. And so actually a graph, if I would just do j.fact here to get this name, this client name, well, this client name refers to the client itself, refers to the supplier. So the whole history get into that graph.
Yes, that is correct.
And so, for example, if I have this name 2A, that refers to client 2. Client 2 refers to supplier. Wait, I need one. Yeah, no, the suppliers are mixed, so they have common records in the history.
Yes.
But
yes.
so these graphs.
When they're added to the graph, then you get just the distinct facts. So you don't get two different copies of it, even if it's got two successors that both point to the same predecessor.
But so it's in fact the cone from one and the cone from the other, and then you have a small piece that is in the section.
Yes.
What was it called already? The
intersection.
The intersection. Yes.
Yeah. They had
I forgot. Primary school is a long time ago. Yeah. Good. But actually, if you look at all this structure, we could just make all this without the await j.fact.
Yes, you could.
And it would be exactly the same. The only difference would be that the facts are not stored in the database.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes, they wouldn't be stored yet until you used them and you had an await j.fact of a successor, and then that would store all of the predecessors as well.
Yeah, but no, what I mean, imagine here, if I do supplier 1 is equal to, if I just run this first line, then it will store this supplier with sub01 pub key.
Right, yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
And then the moment that I do this var client 1s1, then it will take that graph that contains that new client and also that supplier that's already stored, and it will find out that the supplier is already in the database, so it will only store the client.
Correct.
It will add the client to the database, and then I give a name to that supplier. It will add that supplier, but each time it will send the full graph to the save procedure.
Yes.
So if I would leave this j.fact away, I leave that away, and I leave that away, and I would execute these 3 lines, then I end up with a record here that has all its predecessors, but none of it has been saved to the database.
Yes, that is correct.
And the structure of the records might not be, because they have not been going through serializing, deserializing. So it might be a little bit mixed up.
Yeah, it's not going to be in canonical form. So things like dates. Well, here I'm thinking about JavaScript. It's a little bit different in C#, but yeah, in the JavaScript implementation, when you run it through j.fact, it's going to convert those dates into strings, so that they're proper JSON. Here in C#, since it can tell the type of that field is actually date time, then by the time it gets back to you, it's been converted back into a date time. But that also means that if you say, here's a new date time that's not UTC, so it's a local date time, by the time it makes it through j.fact, it's been converted to UTC, because UTC is canonical.
Okay.
Yeah. But the distinction that I was drawing earlier is that if the line that you're on, if that one still did await j.fact, but the previous 2 did not, then on that line, that's where it would save all 3 of the facts.
Yeah. So the 2 first one will just create a record with its predecessors, and then the third one will have the full graph. When it wants to save the graph, it will see that the 2 previous ones are not saved yet, and in that case, it will save everything.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Yeah, I start more or less understanding it. At least I think so. And so, based on the instructions here, the save effect, I think we should be able to get somewhere now. Perhaps finally.
Yeah, I think so. And just in time for me to be finished with the Pluralsight course I'm working on. Actually, then I go to a conference in Austin, so I will be out the last week of May. So
okay, because next week I will not be there. Wait, let me see. So that's the 12th, and you will not be there this 26th then.
Correct.
26th.
Yes, the 26th.
Okay. So 19, we will be there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So then after I'm back from that conference, then I'll be able to dedicate my time again to the Janaga runtime. And so yeah, my plan is to focus on the existing Node backend and make it honor the pipelines, and so do the pipeline queries in Postgres from that backend, and then we should be able to send those pipelines. So now switching back to Janaga.js, and on the client side, send those pipelines to the backend and have it execute those queries.
Okay. Good. Then I'm gonna try to get this save and load implemented by the 19th. I hope this is the final attempt to implement it, because that's what I'm trying for months now. But okay, it doesn't. It takes too much time, but at least I will understand how it works.
Yeah, and yeah, even though it does take a lot of time, this is the kind of thing that you get right once. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the day when we're talking about this kind of code in your final product. So we've got we're looking at code here, but what we're actually looking at is the mobile application written using Maui or Xamarin Forms, and then we're just reasoning through the domain, and we have confidence that the database is going to work, the interest calculation is going to work, it's going to sync up, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. That's
no, because I got back for a while to the queries, and if you look just to the query language, which is in fact quite understandable, and if you switch to the code, then you see it's a complete different world.
Yeah.
But I do want really to understand the code and be able to intervene in the code itself. Because otherwise I don't feel secure.
Yeah.
And it's challenging, and it's also very interesting because the code you write, I don't know how you do, but you're always on the edge of programming techniques.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It's probably not healthy, but yeah, I do. I do still appreciate seeing what the language design team is working on, and it's like, oh, this this feature is coming up in the next version, and so yeah, as soon as it comes out, it's like I want to do everything that way. So yeah, the pattern matching stuff is particularly unhealthy. The way that in Janaga.net I just dove into pattern matching, and actually after a couple of iterations I started to kind of back out of doing everything that way. So yeah, there were some things that the worst that it got was using pattern matching in order to do a null check, and it's like, wait a minute, I can just do a null check and it's fine. I don't have to pattern match and then pull out a variable that's non-nullable. I can just let's not go crazy. But yeah, there are some weird things you can do with pattern matching. So I want to match this this object, and so this variable is of type this class. Okay, that's usually where you stop. But then I was like, no, now you can as if you were initializing that object and doing the property initializers, you open your brackets and you start now pattern matching against the properties. So it's like, okay, when I have this object and I know that this property is of this type, and then it has a property of that type, and then do all this in order to pull out the values of those properties, so that I have exactly the variables I need when I get into that code. That got a little bit unhealthy. It was really hard to read that huge pattern match just to get to these variables, where I could have just said, let's pattern match on the type, and then let's just pull out the properties and use them. I mean, so.
I mean, it's probably a great way to learn about the new features.
Yeah, it definitely was. So maybe if I if I want to propose a talk that's just on C# language features, then I can say, here's some code that uses those language features, and let's not do this. Let's use those language features intelligently.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
No, now I understand. You follow the design team, so you know you learn all the new stuff, and by the way it is released, you can apply it immediately.
Yeah.
Well, in my case, I wait until I see it applied, and then I say, "Oh, I don't understand it. Let's look it up." So I'm years behind, but okay.
Yeah, I mean it used to be a bit worse when I was an MVP, and then I would go to Redmond, and my favorite session at every MVP summit was the design team session. So I would just sit in there and talk about the things that they were doing. Most of the time, I'd already heard about what they were going to talk about at the session, but then I could provide my own my own 2 cents on it, and they would say, yeah, that's good feedback, and then move on and do the thing that they were going to do anyway, because they're much smarter than I am, and this is their day job. But it was always a lot of fun. So yeah, I don't have that that tight interaction anymore, but yeah, I still do like to to see what's coming up. Like the big thing right now in C# 11, there was supposed to be an operator that you could just put 2 exclamation points at the end of a parameter in a function, and that would generate a guard clause for you. So if that came in as null, then it would throw an exception, and that exception would actually name the parameter and give you some more interesting information. Whereas if you without the bang bang operator, if you just use it, you get a no reference exception. It doesn't name the parameter. It doesn't actually give you any context. It's just no reference. So it helped with error messages, and there was a lot of pushback against that that particular feature. And
why can they not always improve that error message?
Yeah.
Without the double exclamation mark.
Right. Yeah. In order to improve the error message, they would have to, if they just wanted to automatically improve the error message, they would have to, when a null reference happens, then inspect the code that produced that value that ended up being null, and then basically include that code in the error message. So if it was just simply the name of a parameter, then you would get the error message that you're looking for. But it could be that you called a function, it returned null, but then you just immediately did a dot and tried to use the response from it. And so does the error message kind of inspect the code and give you that expression? It's kind of difficult. So it's like, okay, we know that this happens with parameters. Let's just put the syntax on the parameter, and now we've got the parameter name, and we can generate the right guard clause. So, so yeah, that's one of the reasons that I love following the language design team, is that they are simultaneously solving a lot of problems that when we think about, hey, I just want this feature, we're not considering all of the context, and they're pretty much forced to. So when they say, okay, we're going to try something out, and they implement it, then at that point the edge cases come up, and they have a suite of tests that are actually based on open source code. And it's like, okay, when we change the language, how much of this code do we break? It should be 0, ideally, but maybe we add a language feature that breaks code that's in production in a subtle way. So it's it's just an interesting kind of walking the line between the mathematical side of symbolic representation and transformation, and the human side of people trying to solve problems and working together in a community to produce an artifact, and then if you find that you've made a mistake, how do you fix that mistake after people have come to rely on it? So, in fact, there was one language feature that Mads Torgersen was doing a talk on C# 10, and so I attended the talk. This was online, and so I asked about the ability to declare a variable just using the var keyword, but then infer the type to be a function or an action. So if you ever try that right now, var f equals some expression that produces a function, and then you want to say, I want to call f and pass in a parameter. Right now, or at the time, the compiler would say, I'm not able to infer this function type. And so I asked Mads about it, and he gave a lot of good technical reasons that was a difficult problem, and so while they would like to solve that problem, they weren't able to do so. But then, lo and behold, it's fixed in C# 10. They shipped a C# that fixed that problem. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I thought this was a hard problem. Well, maybe it was a hard problem, but they figured something out. So
they found a workaround to make it work.
Yeah. And I thought that was funny, is that they were working on C# 10 at the time I asked the question, and it didn't sound like it was even on their radar to fix it. So it's like, did somebody just have an idea and say, well, wait a minute, I never thought about trying it this way, and let's try it out. Hey, that worked, so let's ship it. Wow.
Or perhaps one of his colleagues already fixed the problem,
maybe,
and he was not aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That as big as the language is, that wouldn't surprise me. Although, Mads has his eye on a lot of things that are happening in the language. So he's, if anybody, if one person were to know the most, it would be Mads. Yeah. But yeah, there probably is more than just one person could know everything.
Yeah, the day that just reading 2 books like this would make you an expert is.
Yeah.
It's not so long ago.
Yeah.
20 years ago, that was all you needed to know.
That is true.
And then another book like that, and you were a black belt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the people who wrote those books are still with us. It's amazing. It's still doing valuable work. Our industry's so young.
I heard that what was his name? The one from the antivirus, McAfee. He died in a Spanish prison, I heard.
Yeah, I didn't hear any of the details, but yeah, I remember somebody saying something about that in passing. I'm like, oh, really? I didn't need to look it up, but I never did look it up.
He was one of the pioneers, and then he ended up in, I don't know what he did to get into prison. And then, yeah. Amazing how it goes sometimes. But okay.
Yep.
Good.
All right. So, yep. So you're gonna be out next week. Then I look forward to seeing what progress you make before the 19th. And so yeah, I will do some brainstorming and see what I want to talk about next week, and hopefully we'll get some folks back. We didn't have Caden today, but there was somebody else who jumped into the general channel, Desireth.
I saw that.
So yeah, maybe
he might be there next week.
That'll be awesome.
And I will see the recording then.
Yep.
Okay. Michael, see you in 2 weeks' time then.
Yes, indeed. See you then.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.